Hello and welcome to Reroll. I am Angus Morrison and I review games twice. Right now you are watching a first impressions review, which is fairly self-explanatory. You know how reviews work. The first impressions series is me taking a look at games as close to their release date as possible and really getting to grips with how they play, how they feel on day one. But development barely ever ends at release these days. Games are being constantly updated to fix bugs, add content, or respond to player feedback, and the first impressions review just can't account for the development of a game across its life cycle. Think about how perceptions of Mass Effect 3 or Guild Wars 2 have changed compared to how they were at launch. This is why I'll be doing a second review 1 month from a game's date of release. In the reroll, I hope to assess its longevity, the patches it's received, any DLC available, and I'd also like to take a look at some of the wider critical attention it's received and try to analyse just how they came to that conclusion. If you like the concept or even just the videos, please do subscribe, like the video, all that YouTubey stuff. Today's video is on DmC, Devil May Cry, and we have a lot to get through, so I shall press on. DmC Devil May Cry is a third-person brawler developed by Ninja Theory and published by Capcom. It was originally released for Xbox 360 and PS3 on January 15th, but I shall be reviewing the PC port for you, which came out January 25th. I suppose the best place to start to avoid, or perhaps exacerbate, the hurricane of fanboy fury that's currently raging on the internet is to stress that this is not Devil May Cry 5. Again, it is not Devil May Cry 5. This is a complete, standalone series reboot. Capcom approached Ninja Theory in search of an entirely new take on DmC for an explicitly Western audience, and while I'll be tackling much of this so-called controversy in the re-roll for Devil May Cry, I will say that for those of you furious that Dante isn't the character you're accustomed to in the series, he's not meant to be. This is a different series. I haven't played a lot of the original Devil May Cry, but I'm not sure that's a bad thing in this case. I will be assessing DmC on its own merits, separate from the crowd currently plastering it with Metacritic 3s. If you're in that camp, I will make you a small concession though. Through my having pre-ordered DmC for PC, I now have access to the classic Dante skin pack, which I might break out in 1 or 2 videos to sate your haircut-based bloodlust. Now the disclaimer's out of the way, the second best place to start with a Devil May Cry game is the combat. This is a brawler after all, the clue is in the name, so if they'd messed up combat there'd be little hope for the rest of it. Luckily, Ninja Theory are no strangers to these kind of challenges. They are the team who put together Heavenly Sword and Enslaved after all. Combat feels great. Once you've wrapped your head around the controls, it's possible to turn your killing into a real art form, though as you'll see here, that particular art form eluded me. The number of weapons available, 8 in total, or 10 including the grappling hooks, each free from such petty concerns as ammunition, leads to a ludicrous variety of combos, each with its ground-based or aerial twists. Indeed, the air is often the safest place to be as the demonic hordes begin to swarm unsettlingly. At all times, however, the control scheme remains very intuitive. A lot of thought has gone into the button mapping, so that whatever weapon you're holding, angelic weapons tend towards crowd control while their demonic counterparts bring the noise, whatever weapon you're holding, there's an intuitive sense of what your next button press will do. Certain enemies have been included which are only affected by either demonic or angelic weapons, and while the intent was clearly to force you into shaking up your combos a bit, they actually serve to reduce variation. Being forced to wail away at a single mob with a scythe built for crowd control turns things into an unnecessary slog. As mentioned previously, this is a PC port, and I've tried out the controls using both mouse and keyboard and a 360 controller, and honestly, there's not a lot of difference in it. The keyboard's digital input will always be inferior to an analog stick in these situations, and some of the buttons need to be remapped in order to fluidly switch forms, but the controller's margin of victory is a narrow one. I did find, however, that the camera misbehaves more with a mouse, often becoming stuck on architecture rather than swinging in smoothly in enclosed spaces. There's also no mouse or WASD functionality when accessing menus, which is really nothing but inexcusably lazy porting, and it's a shame that the decent computer controls are let down by basics such as this. In terms of damage at least, the fighting presents a decent challenge. Health will drop fast if you ignore the need to dodge, and health boosters are a rarity. It is possible to buy vital stars to restore your health, but there's a great system in place by which they get more expensive with every one you buy. It really reinforces the sense that this is not a game about soaking up damage. The aim is elegance and evasion. It's a crying shame then that this isn't reflected in its scoring system. It's truly bizarre. You can sprint around a level wailing on things with a single move and still end up with a style rating of S or higher. The scoring system seems to draw more from damage done than from combos or variation. Using items reduces your final score by a set quantity, and each death brings it down by 10%, but it's never enough to truly impact your overall score. Granted, I played through on normal difficulty only, and there are a lot more gameplay variants on offer which might bolster longevity for the score monkey, so I will be taking another look at this issue come the second review. The second major caveat is that death is essentially meaningless. Each fall you take reduces your health by a small portion and sets you back to where you were prior to the slip-up. Now this is absolutely fine. This ensures that gameplay flows nicely and mitigates rage stemming from the game's occasional control slip-ups. When your health is fully depleted, however, what I assume is meant to be a game over screen appears, but instead I'm going to call it the continue without penalty screen. You simply press continue to be revived at full health mere feet from where you last died. There are no forced level restarts and the checkpoints are bountiful. It makes you wonder why death is even a feature. The minuscule 10% score deduction is the only deterrent to carelessly butchering your way through. It hamstrings the drive for elegance that underpins DmC's otherwise excellent combat. Fighting is interspersed with platforming sections that are often very enjoyable in themselves. Relying heavily on the grappling hooks, the running and jumping sections require the same quick thinking as combat, switching between the demonic variant, which pulls objects towards you, and the angelic, which drags you forward. On occasion, things can get messy through no fault of your own. The ring icons that indicate a surface to be interacted with are often washed out by their background or simply don't respond to your input the way they should. There are also a handful of surfaces that look like a sturdy landing pad, only to be found somewhat lacking in collision detection. On the whole though, the hacking and slashing is only enhanced by a dash of acrobatic flair. These same controls also form part of what is essentially a QuickTime event system. The boss fights usually involve some form of cued button pressing, but the cutscenes here are unusually well integrated with gameplay. There's always a danger of frustration when dealing with scripted set pieces. I'm looking at you, Far Cry 3. And arguably one of the later bosses seems more eager to show off Ninja Theory's creation than to let you fight it, but DmC's smooth transitions and brief failure states ensure their presence isn't entirely unwelcome. You have to forgive them for wanting to show off their world from the best possible angle too, because what a world it is. I honestly cannot remember the last time I saw a game with such a broad range of settings. Your trip through both the human world and Limbo will take you through fairgrounds, mansions, factories, a demonic newsroom and a set of blueprints. Visual spectacle is in no short supply. Your environs shift and change violently before you, lending the whole world a sense of life and fluidity that really reinforces the need to keep on your toes, and the rampant colour of the game is enthralling. When you eventually run across a mission in grayscale, its sudden deathly pallor really serves to drive home the magnitude of the situation. There seems to be a trend of cramming in as much fluorescent colour as possible in recent games, and it is certainly one that I hope continues. The PC port's graphics options are somewhat limited. There's no manual control over anti-aliasing or texture filtering, for example. But they have deigned to include a high-res texture and shadow pack to reflect the greater power afforded by the platform. With these enabled, wider city shots and driving sequences are really the only things that betray the game's console origins. Let's talk story, because I loved it. In DmC, demons are present in our world and control the banking system, news corporations and soft drinks companies, and I was so worried that this was going to be an attempt at clever meta-commentary which has absolutely no place in a hack and slash game. Thankfully, it serves only as a device to locate the story in the present day, where previous Devil May Cry games have been more detached from reality. Voice acting is excellent, as we've come to expect from modern AAA releases, especially in the two lead characters, Dante and Virgil. This is supported by a sterling effort on the part of the animation team, which sees Dante's tongue-in-cheek quips lent physical presence. Their comic timing is excellent, and the script never takes itself too seriously. When it needs to, however, the unfolding story can pluck the heartstrings and draw out feelings of sympathy and distress. There are people who have railed against the new Dante for being unpleasantly arrogant, but that's really the point. He certainly starts off with all the depth of a paddling pool, but the game sees him develop into an interesting and compassionate character. He's certainly better than his brother, who goes from naught to douchebag faster than you can blink. A brawler like this doesn't need a storyline to carry it through, and that Ninja Theory have gone to the extra trouble makes it all the stronger. Replayability, as I said earlier, is a topic I'll be able to better assess in my DmC reroll video in 1 month's time, but at the moment it's looking promising. In addition to the standard mission pathways, there are collectible keys hidden around each level which unlock doors, also hidden around each level, to mini-games such as time trials and navigational challenges. They're perhaps not the deepest of additional content you've ever seen, but it's nice to test your dexterity in ways other than mashing demon spawn into a fine paste. One resolutely pointless addition comes in the form of DmC's achievements, which I assume were included because someone at marketing refused to let the game ship unless the player was rewarded for every breath they remembered to take. To illustrate, you get an achievement for finding a copper key. You then get a second achievement for unlocking the door to which that key belongs. A third achievement is awarded upon completing the challenge behind the said door to which the said key for which you get an achievement for finding belongs. They're entirely superfluous. Finding the key and opening a secret door should be its own reward. Completing the challenge should result in a sense of satisfaction that isn't dependent on a Steam pop-up congratulating you on tying your shoelaces. When I'm forced to pick on annoyances this small though, you can be pretty sure a game is worth its salt, and DmC is worth all the salt. Its combat is weighty and fluid in turn, executed via a supremely well-mapped control system, whether playing on PC or console. Even if you're not a fan of the third-person brawler, I'd highly recommend coming for the scenery. Devil May Cry has some of the most imaginative and most varied level design I have ever seen, and while the sense of achievement is continually undercut by a patronising score system, DmC Devil May Cry has my full recommendation. For now, of course, Reroll will be strapping it back to the rack once more in a month's time. Before then, we've got some really exciting stuff coming up in February, notably Dead Space 3 and Tomb Raider, among others, so if you'd like to see more, do go ahead and subscribe to be kept up to date with all of my upcoming content. Thank you very much for watching.